Defense attorneys have decided not to show scans of Nikolas Cruz's brain to the jury. It's something they initially wanted to do to prove he has brain damage, but today they ended up backing out of it.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Nick here with another breakdown, and this one kind of hits close to home, both figuratively and literally. Literally because I live about 5 miles away from Parkland, where the infamous Stoneman Douglas shooting occurred, done by Nikolas Cruz, who's currently on trial awaiting sentencing. Now, figuratively, obviously, because I am in the psychological and brain science field. So either way you spin it, this is something that piqued my interest. Now, with that being said, we're not looking to have an opinion necessarily if he was wrong based off his mental health. That's not what this is. I try to keep opinions out of it. While I do denounce what he did, and I think it's heinous and all the families affected, it's tragic what happened to them. But this is to look at why I'm bringing this up when it comes to why they're trying to use brain scans for Nikolas Cruz's trial. Now, they're using something called an EEG. Now, if you don't know what an EEG is, it stands for an electroencephalogram. Now, what that means is it reads brain activity based off of electrodes that's placed on specific regions of the brain. Now, to give you an example, think of a heart rate monitor. That's way more common, right? So we understand you strap your chest with a heart rate monitor, or even in case you have watches now that can even do it, and it measures how many beats that your heart conducts each minute. Now, the thing with a heart rate monitor, it tells us the actual activity of the heart, but it can't tell us necessarily underlying issues. It can give us an idea, but it cannot diagnose. It's not clinical. For example, 60 to 80 beats per minute is pretty good for resting heart rate. People are considered healthy will be around that range when they're not doing any activity. Now, let's say you have 100 beats per minute while you're sitting down, hanging out, chilling. Now, this is not good. This might say, what could be going on? So you see, it doesn't tell me if I'm having any actual cardiac event or heart disease issues. It's just telling my heart is working harder than it needs to be right now. Because if you're exercising and it was going 130, 150 beats per minute, this makes sense because when you're moving, your heart has to pump more blood. But that's the point of it. It gives us the level of activity, so it's useful for that measure, but it cannot really diagnose anything. Now, going back to the EEG, it's the same principle. Now, there's 4 lobes of the brain. There's a frontal lobe, the occipital lobe, the temporal lobe, and the parietal lobe. Now, each lobe has a set of different functions that it carries out, and they all work together to make you do what you need to do. Now, when you put on the EEG headset or the electrodes to your head, it's placed in specific regions to correlate with these lobes and show the level of activity that's going on with them. For example, if you want to see what each lobe does, the frontal lobe is for decision-making, planning, working memory, emotional regulation, impulse control, things of that nature. This is what makes us human, right? Now, the parietal lobe is more so spatial awareness and movement. The temporal lobe deals with language and hearing, things of that nature. And the occipital lobe is for vision. Now, this is just a generalized example of what they do. There's more functions of each lobe, but just give you an idea. So let's say I'm an impulsive person. You may see more activity to my frontal lobe while the EEG headset is on me. But the thing is, different actions can make these activities increase. So if you get excited in that moment, they go up. If you get happy, if you get sad, they can all change based off a lot of things. If you're moving around, fidgeting. So it's not necessarily telling me what's wrong. It's just saying what's happening in real time. Now, going back to the Nikolas Cruz trial, as you saw with the clip, the doctor says it probably would have been irrelevant. And that's because these activities of his brain don't really paint a picture, because even if he does have brain damage, this does not tell us how severe it is. And also, even if he is, from a clinical standpoint, I can see how that can play a role to what he did, but he still has behaviors and choices that he as a person had to make, and you cannot absolve responsibility because of that. So that's why having the EEG is trying to use some scientific type jargon to make jurors may not understand. But the point is it's more so giving a light, very light picture of what's happening in real time versus the actual diagnosis or a pathology of what's happening in the brain. So the EEG, while it records brain function to a very discrete level, it doesn't really tell us what's going on in a point that we can even make this useful in a trial if it even was used. So I'll wrap this up to say that that's why I like doing these videos, because while my background is no longer in the clinical side, it's more on the applied practical side of psychology and performance. It's great to look at these concepts, and even if you don't go deep into them, understanding them at a surface level will help you make sense of it, because to the general population, hearing these terms, EEG, brain scans, brain waves, There's different types like the fMRI or MRI, which actually shows blood flow and activity in the regions of the brain and showing the metabolic functions, which means that showing how it actually resonates to specific functions. So this gives us a better indication with MRI or fMRI. So these are just aspects of how you can read a brain, but at the end of the day, it still doesn't tell us exactly why. And with the brain, since it's so much more abstract than something like your heart, you can't really make clear, distinct directions of why and how. So as usual, guys, thanks for tuning in and thanks for letting me break it down and get your mind right.